What's good, y'all? And welcome back to another preseason preview video. In today's video, we're going over the Indiana Pacers. In case this is your first preseason preview video of mine that you're seeing, basically what I do is go through the offseason, give a little recap there, and then try to look into the future and see what we can expect in this upcoming season. I'm going to be making videos on all 30 NBA teams, so make sure you check out my channel to see the ones that I already uploaded, and then make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the ones coming forward. But yeah, in this video, we're going over the Indiana Pacers, and we might as well just jump right into it. Last year, needless to say, super successful season for the Pacers. They finished as the 4th seed in the Eastern Conference, going 50-32. But their real success didn't really happen until the playoffs, where they, obviously went on one of the craziest runs I have ever seen. They caught just lightning in a bottle there, and they just upset after upset after upset, game-winning shot after game-winning shot after improbable victory. Like, it was really, objectively, as a basketball fan, amazing to watch. As a Knicks fan, really painful to watch. But, just seeing the Pacers and Tyrese and all these guys just win after everyone kind of wrote them off was super dope. Of course, we all know how it did end, though. They made it to the finals, pushed them all the way to Game 7, and then, unfortunately, Tyrese Halliburton did, of course, tear his Achilles, and they did lose that game. And Tyrese obviously is expected to miss all of this year, so it's going to be a little bit of a fall from grace, going all the way from the finals to now your star player is out for the whole year. But hopefully the silver lining there is that there really was nothing to do. Like, it's not like the front office made the wrong trade, or you let someone walk, or it was this or that. Like, your star player got hurt, he's going to be out for the year, you kind of just got to rock with it. We can move some of that bad juju out the way now and talk about the offseason that the Pacers had this year. And before I talk about the guys they brought in, I do want to just highlight some of the guys that they lost. The number one name and probably the most shocking move out of all of free agency in my eyes, of course, is Miles Turner. The lifelong Pacer is now a Milwaukee Buck. I personally thought that Miles Turner was going to be a Pacer for life. He got drafted there. He's been there for, 10 plus years at this point. He's expressed how much he loves the city. The city loves him back. Maybe not anymore, but they did love him back. I really thought that he was going to be set in stone, locked there. Even when the Pacers were in the finals, it was already rumored that the Pacers ownership was willing to pay some of that luxury tax in order to bring Miles back. And I don't know what took place that set off the dominoes to make it so Miles Turner is not a Pacer. Was it Tyrese's injury? Was it the fact that they lost the finals? Was it both of them? Was it something completely out of that? I don't really know. The reality is, though, he is a Milwaukee Buck. Not only was I super surprised that, he's not a Pacer, but the fact that he is now a Milwaukee Buck, I really just didn't get that at all, considering that's one of the biggest, if not the absolute biggest rivalry right now in the NBA, in the Eastern Conference, and the Central Division. Those two teams hate each other, and the fact that he just kind of swapped sides there was just really shocking to me. For years now, Miles Turner was protecting the rim for the Pacers. He was stretching the floor for their high-powered offense, and now he's not going to be in a Pacers uniform anymore, and I'm sure that does sting a little bit. The other guy the Pacers lost this offseason was Thomas Bryant. He currently is still sitting in free agency at the time of recording this video, but he was pretty good for the Pacers last year. Ever since he came over, he just kind of stepped up and was their backup big whenever they needed. I remember very vividly, unfortunately, in the closeout Game 6 Eastern Conference Finals against my Knicks, Thomas Bryant went 3 for 3 from 3. So that shows how he steps up. But also, last year, the Pacers dealt with a lot of injury at the center position. Thomas Bryant assured some of that. But like I said, right now, he is currently a free agent, and it's looking like the Pacers will not be bringing him back. Now to talk about the guys the Pacers brought in this offseason, starting off with a trade they made, which I felt like went very under the radar, but I really do like this trade a lot. And that is, of course, the Pacers trading away a 2029 second-round pick and a 2031 second-round pick to the Memphis Grizzlies in exchange for Jay Huff. And the last segment, when I talked about the Pacers losing some of their players, both of those guys I highlighted were centers. Jay Huff, he was brought in as a center to help kind of mitigate some of those losses. Specifically in that Miles Turner role, I think he can really flourish. Not that he's anywhere near the level of player Miles Turner is, but he has a lot of the same skill sets in the fact that he is a 7-footer. He has a great shot blocking ability, and he could stretch the floor. Not a lot of centers in the league have those three things, but Jay Huff does. So the fact that the Pacers are moving out a guy that has those things, but are still bringing in someone that can replace him, I feel like that's super huge, especially when you talk about being able to have the same style of offense, the same style as defense. It's important to have the same style of players. But I also really like the value of this trade because, first, they only gave up 2 second-round picks, which really aren't that valuable. But also, when you look at Jay Huff's contract, he's under contract for the next 2 to 3 seasons, and he's only making about $2.5 to $3 million for those years. So he's going to have a super low contract for the next few years. He should be able to have some really solid production for that. And then although these moves technically aren't new additions, I do want to highlight them because they were the Pacers' own free agents. They brought back Isaiah Jackson on a new 3-year, $21 million deal. So he'll be making about $7 million a year. And then they also brought back James Wiseman on a 2-year, $5.6 million deal. That second year is a team option. So obviously you guys can see center was the mainstay of the offseason for the Pacers. And now that we recap the offseason, let's take a look at a potential rotation we could be seeing from the Pacers this year. In the starting lineup, we have Andrew Nembhard, Benedict Mathurin, Aaron Nesmith, Pascal Siakam, and Isaiah Jackson. And then off the bench, we have TJ McConnell, Ben Shepherd, Jarris Walker, Obi Toppin, and Jay Huff. I gotta be honest, it is extremely weird to see a roster or a rotation for the Pacers and not see both Miles Turner and Tyrese Haliburton. I can't tell you the last time we haven't seen either of those guys, but again, unfortunately, that's kind of the situation the Pacers are in this year. I will say, though, the Pacers are probably one of the best teams that this could happen to, if there is a best team for this to happen to, just because, obviously, their depth has been one of their main pieces, one of their main strengths for the last few seasons now. So even though they are missing 2 of their best 3 players from last year, this year, their rotation still looks pretty solid. Now, I'm not going to lie, that center position is definitely looking at me as the weakest part of this roster. I've already talked about Jay Huff, and I think that he could be good as a backup center. Isaiah Jackson, I'm a little bit, not concerned about, but a little bit more question marks around him just because he is coming off his own Achilles injury from last year, happened early in the year. So he should be fully healthy for the season. But, you know, he has always been one of those guys that is super energetic, super athletic, you know, the hustle plays, the offensive rebounds, defensive blocks. A lot of that obviously has to deal with athleticism, and him coming off an injury like that as a big, needing to be even in a bigger role now, you know, I do have some of my concerns with that. Hopefully he can be solid, though. But besides that, I mean, the Pacers have the talent, and a lot of these guys are going to have the opportunity. It's really just what do they do with that? Obviously, you have Pascal Siakam, who's going to be their #1 scoring option this year. He's going to have a lot on his plate being back as the guy. You know, he was there in Toronto for a few years as the guy. Now that there's no Tyrese, he's going to have to step up. But I'm also seeing a lot of people, rightfully so, looking at Andrew Nembhard to step up, looking at Benedict Mathurin to step up. You know, Caitlin Cooper, in her sit-down with Rick Carlisle on Basketball, she wrote, he already mentioned that Benedict Mathurin is the starting shooting guard. He is going into the camp being that guy, and unless something drastic happens with him, he will be the starting shooting guard, and I do think that that's going to be really important for his development. Whenever I've seen Benedict Mathurin check into a game, he just gets the ball, aggressively drives to the basket, gets a foul call, or, you know, finishes through contact, whatever it is. We're going to see a lot more of that this year just because there's a lot more shots to go around. And a lot of people have talked about how Tyrese is the engine of their offense and how he kind of sets up the system of getting the ball movement and everything. If he's not there, I would assume the ball movement is going to take a little bit of a hit. You know, I'm not saying the ball is going to stick everywhere now, but I would assume it takes a little bit of a hit. Benedict Mathurin is definitely going to be a guy that benefits from that. And then, like I mentioned, Andrew Nembhard is the other guy the Pacers are looking at as a guy to step up. I could definitely see it happening. It's just Andrew Nembhard is so weird to me as a player because when you look at him at the regular season, he's a solid player, good player. You know, he will be your secondary ball handler. He can give you some creation by himself, some playmaking, knock down a few shots occasionally. You know, solid. When he comes to the playoffs, though, he's like a Jimmy Butler level riser where he just hits a whole nother level and becomes one of the best role players in the NBA. If he's able to take that production and just sprinkle it across a consistent 82 games, yeah, he could definitely be in most improved talks. I'm just really interested to see, like, if he's able to do that because it boggles my mind how he's able to just flip that switch like that. Regardless, though, Nembhard is going to have a big uptick in his ball handling responsibilities. On this roster, it's basically just him and TJ McConnell that I really look at as playmakers and facilitators. Pascal Siakam, I think, is a good passer, especially for his position, and I do think that he'll see an uptick in him being like the playmaker. But when you look at just like point guards and guys that are going to bring the ball up and really, you know, get the plays and sets going, it's basically TJ McConnell and Nembhard. I still do think the Pacers are going to be running their fast-paced, move-the-ball system, and I do think that since they still have a lot of talent on their roster, they could still be good. I just am worried a little bit about that ball handling responsibility because, again, if it's not those two guys at point guard, they really don't have much else on the roster. Real quick, I do want to mention some notable reserves. Of course, we do have Tyrese Halliburton, like I mentioned, and all of you guys know he will be out for the entirety of this season. He obviously still is on the roster. Just hurt though, so I'm not going to put him in the rotation. And then the other guy I wanted to bring up was James Wiseman. I mentioned that the Pacers brought him back on a 2-year deal, second year being a team option. Just because there's so many question marks around the center rotation for the Pacers, James Wiseman definitely has a chance to crack this rotation and be a backup or maybe even a starter. I do think that these three centers they have on the roster are pretty close together in talent. So, you know, especially James Wiseman, you look at him a few years ago, was one of the top overall picks in the draft. He still is super young, also coming off an Achilles injury. So I feel like though between those three centers, it's kind of whoever's hot, whoever's playing the best type of situation. My choice though would be Isaiah Jackson and Jay Huff. And now it is time to go over the ceiling, floor, and my expectations for the Indiana Pacers. Starting off with the ceiling, I could see this team being as high as the 7th seed and in the play-in tournament. I do think that the lack of Tyrese Halliburton and the lack of Miles Turner is going to hurt this team. That's obvious. Like, you know, you lose 2 of your 3 best players, your team is going to be worse. I've mentioned before, though, the Pacers with their depth, I do think that there is a world where they can still be a good team, a competitive team, especially in cases where Benedict Mathurin or Andrew Nembhard are looking like most improved candidates. In situations like that, I could definitely see them making the play-in tournament, winning the play-in tournament, and then making, of course, the playoffs. But when it comes to the playoffs, though, I mean, it would be really, really difficult for them to pull off an upset without their best player against a 1 or 2 seed. Obviously, we've seen this Pacers team do really difficult things before, but at their ceiling, I'm pretty safe to say they are a first-round exit. When you look at their floor, I could see them being as low as the 11th seed, and honestly, I could maybe even see worlds where they're even lower than that if they decide to fully bottom out and just say, you know what, we have our draft pick this year, our best guy is out, let's just try to win the lottery and, you know, just re-up a little bit while we're resting up Tyrese. That's almost impossible to really gauge and guess, and I don't think the Pacers would do that. I could be wrong, but I do think that they're going to go out here and be at least a little competitive, at least until the All-Star break. After that, maybe we'll see them start to pull some guys, but I do think the Pacers are going to go out there, try to win some games, but at their floor, I see them being as low as the 11th seed and in the lottery. And then when you talk about my expectations, I expect them to be around that 9th seed. I could see them being like the 8th or the 10th. Obviously, I have their ceiling at the 7th. I'm pretty confident in them being a play-in tournament team, but if they're in the lower bracket of the play-in in that 9 or 10 matchup, they would have to win 2 games. Definitely possible still. Again, though, it kind of plays into the idea of like, all right, well, is it worth it to win the play-in tournament, get a first-round matchup against the Knicks or the Cavs or the Hawks or whatever the team is, lose in the first round and then not have a lottery pick? Or we just saw the Dallas Mavericks jump all the way up to the #1 overall pick. Let's just get some type of odds and hope for the best. You know, you gotta weigh your options right there. I expect the Pacers to make the play-in tournament, but be play-in losers. What do you guys think, though? Let me know in the comments below where you think the Pacers are going to end this season. They're one of the weirdest teams right now to look at because, obviously, they're dealing with injury, but also kind of talented enough to still be competitive in a weaker Eastern Conference. So it's kind of up in the air if you ask me. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to leave it a like, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. In the description, there's links to all my social medias, so make sure you follow me on all those to keep up to date with me. Catch y'all.